Hello, bonsoir, and welcome to episode 5 of the Get French Football News Show. I'm Nathan Staples, and joining myself and the ever present Eric Devine and Philippe Bargil this week is freelance journalist Mohammed Ali. Week 35 is in the books, and before we go on to chat about the events of the week, here's Eric with this week's news.
Thanks, Nathan. In the league, Paris Saint-Germain's midweek encounter against Metz in the league saw the capital side run out 3-1 winners, increasing the pressure on title rivals Lyon ahead of the weekend's matches. On Friday, Marseille opened matchday 35 with a 2-0 victory away at Metz, with an Andre Pierre-Gignac brace all but confirming Les Grenats Ligue 2 status for next season. Saturday's early match saw Lyon continue to put the onus on PSG with another efficient, if unspectacular, victory over Evian at the Gerland 2-0, with Alexander Lacazette once again on the scoresheet, his penalty coming after Clément Grenier's first goal in 16 months. In the multiplex, the shock result was in Corsica as host Bastia improved their hopes for survival and put a serious dent on Saint-Etienne's Champions League aspirations, running out 1-0 winners thanks to a late winner from Floyd Aite. In Brittany, Guingamp's Christophe Mandan and Claudio Beauvue were both scorers, the pair now having combined for 41 goals in all competitions on the season, while Reims stay outside of the drop zone thanks to other results. Lorient hosted Bordeaux, while Rennes traveled to Montpellier, both matches ending in scoreless draws. There were goals in Nice, meanwhile, but the result was the same, 1-1 as the hosts battled back against Caen. On Sunday, Lille won a fiery Derby du Nord 3-1 over Lens, relegated after the previous day's results, coming from behind to give Les Dogs' European hopes a boost. Monaco, meanwhile, looked to have all but locked up third place thanks to a 4-1 victory over hapless Toulouse, Joao Coutinho providing an assist and a brilliant glancing header. Anthony Martial netted for his 8th time in 9 matches, in an encounter that saw both sides end proceedings with 10 men, Nabil Dirar and Jean-Armel Kana Bayek having been sent off 10 minutes from time. In the evening match, Paris Saint-Germain welcomed Zlatan Ibrahimovic back to the fold, and the big Swede marked the occasion with a fine assist for Blaise Matuidi, retaining first place with a 2-0 win over Nantes. The club will, however, miss Thiago Motta and Marco Verratti for matchday 37's trip to Montpellier, however, due to the pair's yellow card accumulation. In other news, Troyes confirmed their promotion to Ligue 1 for next season, and Philip will be telling us more about the Champagne Club a bit later. Lyon president Jean-Michel Aulas, meanwhile, continues to make headlines of his own, complaining that the LFP caved to their club's demands in reducing the suspensions of Dimitri Payet and Zlatan Ibrahimovic. The loan signing of Serge Aurier has been made permanent by PSG, while Claudio Beauvue has announced his intent to leave Guingamp in the summer. With 15 goals on the season in the league, the diminutive striker is certain to have no shortage of suitors. That's all for now. Back to you, Nathan.
Thank you, Eric, as always, and make sure to head to the Get French Football News website and Twitter for all your latest headlines. The links are in the description. We'll start this week where we always seem to start lately. Marseille have finally stopped the rot this week, beating Metz 2-0 thanks to 2 Gignac goals. We've been at Bielsa's throat for the past few weeks, but shed some light on this result for us. Mel, welcome to the show. What did El Loco do right for us this week?
Thanks for the invite, first of all. In regards to the result, it seemed to be a welcome boost for the club. After losing 4 straight games, finally 3 points on the board, and where we should have been, realistically, should have been at least challenging or being in the forefront for a Champions League place. It at least puts us into the race against Monaco for the last 3 games of the season. But I don't think anything's changed in regards to the tactics or anything in Bielsa's thinking. I think he's a very stubborn man, to put it at best. He is a man that will rigidly stick to his plans that has been put in place well before Friday's game. I think it's the mentality of the players that's changed. For the last 3 games against Bordeaux, against Nantes, what we've seen a lackluster effort from the players, and with the fans, and our Unforgiven fans are not, they're not the sort of fans who take this lying down, and the heat has been turned up on these players, and the microscope has been put on them firmly. So therefore, what we've seen is a change of attitude, and a poor result against a team that looks certain to be relegated would not have been taken at all. So, a solid 3 points, a solid game from the players who seem to have waken up from the malaise, and hopefully we can go on and kick on for a huge game next weekend.
Yeah, and much more on that later. Philip, was there much improvement on the pitch really this week?
Well, first of all, not only on the pitch, but when I look at the formation, so Bielsa went back to 4-2-3-1, and looking at this squad, it just looks much more balanced. I mean, Morel was suspended because he had a red card, and you had Fanny and Nkulu at the back. Lemina was probably the only player who was not playing in his natural position, but he was playing right back, and that's what he did. He did okay. Then you had the front three, the midfield three of Alessandro Payet and Andre Ayew, and they're all three of them. They look, I mean, they look comfortable in what position they were playing in. And then you have Gignac, who really, congratulations on him, by the way, scoring his 100th and 101 goals in Liga 1. He really scored poacher's goals. The second one, the goalkeeper basically gave him plenty to aim at as he went down quite easily. But the first goal is really a real striker's goals. It really reminds me of people are just there to score, a la Inzaghi. So they were all very, very good, and I do agree that not winning this game would have been pretty bad, and the pressure would have been really on. So it was important for them to stop the rot. So not only did they stop the rot, but they won, and now they actually got their fourth place back on goal difference because Saint-Etienne lost.
Eric, you weigh in this. You've been very vocal about Marseille in the past couple of weeks, to say the least. Has there been a marked improvement this week?
I wouldn't say market improvement, but I think definitely. I think early in the match, the first 20 or 30 minutes until Marseille had scored, the match was certainly the balance. Metz had a couple of great chances early on. Were playing well, but Marseille really grew into the match. And again, Gignac was tremendous. I mean, he could have easily had a pair of assists, some great saves from the Metz keeper there, denying him a chance to have a couple assists along with that brace. That was maybe the best I've seen from him this season, or at least in the past few months. He, looks to have lit a fire under him, and if he can perform like that, maybe that's enough to drag this Marseille side back into the Champions League places. So not so much on a team level, but if Marseille certainly have the individuals who, if they can play with this sort of conviction, can make a difference. And it's not necessarily an improved team effort, but it's certain players waking up and dominating a match, and that's what Marseille need, and it's what they haven't had in this recent poor run of form.
I mean, I think that's a fair point. I can't remember, save for perhaps the two big away wins in February, March against Toulouse and Lens. I can't remember a positive team performance from Marseille since the turn of the year. I don't think that's actually happened since before Christmas, and you could obviously you could see that reflected in the league table. What we have now is one or two individuals, most likely it's either Gignac or Batshuayi coming off the bench, that seems to shine, or chances that just come at the right time for those individuals. But throughout the team, I mean, the performance levels have been well below par. If it's not offensive issues, and it doesn't seem to be this season, it will always be poor communication and poor teamwork at the back that seems to shoot Marseille. Sees the team shoot themselves in the foot, and we've seen that on countless occasions, especially in the last four games.
Well, it's been a topsy-turvy season altogether for Marseille, and a defeat to Monaco next weekend, like we've discussed before, will spell the end of their Champions League hopes. If they miss out on third, is their season a failure, Philip?
No, like I said many times before, I think they've overachieved. They don't have that big a squad. I think the players are good Ligue 1 players, but Bielsa was able to make a good unit, and the place was really not a pretty sight in the summer. And there was really a real row between Bielsa and Marseille president Labrune, and most of the media experts in France had Bielsa as sacked, but in the end, La Brune didn't sack him. Probably because Marseille were doing great. I mean, they had a great start to the season. It was really, really great. There was so as they sing in France that we call the champion d'automne, is a team that finishes top after 19 games, which is halfway through the season. And usually in France, the champion d'automne becomes actually the champions. So I think Bielsa is a very demanding manager. But that Marseille are still in there, just 5 points from third, is a good season, I think. I certainly didn't expect that back in August.
I think that also the mid-table in the halfway point highlights how much of a cataclysmic sort of second half it's been, Eric. Because surely it must be some kind of failure to fall from such a great height.
Well, I think it's not only a matter of falling from a great height, but it's what it says about the future. If we look at the second half of the season, with the ascent of Monaco and Lyon and Paris are continuing at a great clip, if they continue along the same path, unless there's a major sell-off on the part of Monaco or Lyon, reaching the Champions League in future seasons is going to be really difficult. And I think that there because of this, there may be some doubt on the part of the club's ownership as regards their future as a Champions League team. If the top three continue this sustained run of success, Marseille are going to have major investment to break that glass ceiling, if you will, especially with the youngsters that Monaco and Lyon have. Their teams for the future as well as now. And that's the real issue. When you look at the summer, you've got Ayew, Gignac, Fani, Morel. They're all out of contract. I know that perhaps Fani and Morel haven't been as essential to the team as the first two, but still, you're going to have to bring players in to just to strengthen the squad. I mean, because even if they fail to make Champions League, Marseille still look a pretty fair bet for Europa League. So building depth over the summer is going to be necessary. So without that money that would be coming in from the Champions League, even though they wouldn't necessarily be a sure thing to reach the group stage, I think it can be difficult for Bielsa, and if he stays, and La Brune to convince the ownership to sustain investment in the club, and that's the issue. This team's going to need to put serious work in the summer. A new center back, probably another winger, another striker, and without the Champions League there, this could really be a hammer blow for Marseille in terms of investment in the near future.
I think they really it's either make or break. I mean, everything is going down on next Sunday evening at the Vélodrome against Monaco. If they win, they're really in there for the last two games, and they only be 2 points behind with a better goal difference. But you have to score against Monaco, and that's not easy. And if they draw or lose, I think you can pretty much say they'll be in the Europa League next season. But the question is, what will the board do with that piece of information? Will they invest or not? I mean, I'm pretty sure that the board will invest if Marseille do finish third. And you really got to keep in mind that the last two French teams to have finished third did not make the Champions League group stages. And but with Europa League, I don't know. I mean, Saint-Etienne didn't really invest, and they played mostly boring games at Inter Milan or Petrovsk in Eastern Europe. So I'm pretty sure Marseille will end up in the Europa League, but I'm not quite sure the squad will change. I mean, and we do have these very strong rumours of players leaving, but we don't really have strong rumours of players arriving. I saw Thauvin maybe to Tottenham or Newcastle, but I didn't see much else in terms of players arriving or anyway ambition of buying new players this summer.
Mo, if Europa League make this a failure?
I mean, you're gonna have to look at it like over the season. If you said to me in August, Marseille would be vying for the Champions League 2 games or 3 games left in the season, that would represent an acceptable improvement, especially when you look at last season's debacle. But again, if you said that same question to me in January when we were top of the league, and in January we had a simple run almost because the fixtures reflected fixtures at New Year reflected those of August and September in reverse. And in August and September, obviously, that was a fantastic 8 consecutive wins in a row. So it shouldn't have been too difficult, especially with Paris Saint-Germain in as many competitions as they were at the time. So if you said that to me in January, I mean, most Marseille fans would look in horror, almost. I mean, it'll be a failure. And if like Phil said, if the Champions League qualifications represents a big gamble on the club and the direction it heads in the next 2 to 3 months. If Champions League qualification is met and we do qualify, obviously again, no bet that we do reach the group stages, but if it is met, then players like Ayew and Gignac, if they do go, we've got the funds in to bring quality players, and you never know, they might stay and have a last crack at elite level, because there's no guarantee for them if they do go to the Premier League, if they do go to the Newcastles and the Tottenhams. Again, those clubs might not be in the Champions League, given England's monopoly with Arsenal and the rest of the top 4. But if Champions League qualification is not met, the Europa League is instead the direction, then you can see the key players leaving at the first opportunity, and there will not be as many funds as available to the club. And I really doubt the owner putting in 20 million or 25 million euros to help stabilize the club. But she did that, Margarita Lewis-Dreyfus, she did that last summer with the arrival of Marcelo Bielsa. And I really don't think that she'd do the same again. And another key point, if I would say that if this season was a failure, Vincent Lebrun and the rest of the Marseille hierarchy, they always look at the direct rivals. They always talk of putting Marseille up against direct rivals, the Lyon, Saint Etienne, which helps stomach the results a little bit better. If you wouldn't want to put the team up against Paris Saint-Germain and try and achieve the same objectives. But then we have Lyon, who we were fighting for 5th place last year, and which we failed to reach the Europa League last year. That same Lyon team with few additions are now 2 or 3 games away from the title, whereas we are languishing in 4th. In regards to that, if we reflect back, then I think this season could turn out quickly to be a failure.
And
I just stumbled upon.
Go on, Philip.
Sorry, Nathan. I just stumbled upon this thing because you were talking more about the form in the early months of 2015. And I remember watching this Coupe de France game at Grenoble. Finished 3-3, and Grenoble equalized at the 120th minute, and won on penalties. And then Marseille went on to have a pretty horrible away run. I mean, the home wins were there. They won the next 2 home games, and then the away. But on the travels, it really started to look extremely difficult. And I think Marseille since then have only won 3 games away, and I think it's against the bottom 3. So maybe it's a mental thing. When they came across a really solid side like Caen, Caen were really flying. It's pretty much the contrary to Marseille in those months, because Caen were flying. They're still not safe, and they won at Marseille 3-2, which was another really great game. But maybe it was a mental block, and that came back. I mean, of course they won at the Stade de France against Lens 4-0, and now Metz 2-0. So maybe a lack of belief in themselves.
I mean, yeah, I would look at it not as a lack of belief. I look at it as complacency almost. The Coupe de France exit against a lower ranked side was not acceptable, and even if the club did go out at the first hurdle, you've got just 19 games compared to Paris Saint-Germain, who played well over 30 in the same period in both domestic cups and the Champions League. We've only had 19 league games to focus on since the new year, and the form directly after the Grenoble defeat was pretty much shocking. And I wouldn't put down the issue as mental mental block, or the fact that some players were beginning to feel the heat. Marseille were out at the top, and we had a golden opportunity to close to extend the lead at times, because there were consecutive weekends, if you remember, at the end of January or February, where not one of Marseille, Lyon, or Paris Saint-Germain won. Everybody was falling over themselves. It's only in April when we lost 4 in a row and Paris Saint-Germain and Lyon steamed ahead by winning those games. It's only then. You do remember at the beginning of April, a win against Paris Saint-Germain would have actually just sent us a point behind the leaders at the time. So it's all gone wrong very recently. But at the time, we've had players who, and it's an issue. I wrote about this last week. It's an issue for these players who are accustomed to complacency, accustomed to not focusing during a game, and most of where the goals have conceded from have been Rod Fanny or Jeremy Morel, or the defense not focusing on marking a key player and conceding very, very easy goals as well. The 1-0 defeat to Nantes a couple of weeks ago just springs to mind, and it's just simply no excuse. We've been out of the 2 cups of the first hurdle. You've had 19 games. You've had direct rivals who have fallen over themselves. There is really, it's been a golden opportunity. I wouldn't put this down to Bielsa. I mean, less than half the blame would go to Bielsa. Maybe, the stubbornness or not understanding, not replicating his methods to the players, or But I think the very clear excuse is that we have, a group of players that are accustomed to failure. We have, the key players, Mandanda, Gignac, Fanny Morel. They've been there, this season, last season with Jose Inigo, where the club just really were in the middle of nowhere, and the season before that with losing in the Champions League, and it's just become a common occurrence, really.
Well, hold on a second, Mo, because if those particular players you all mentioned, I believe, were all also around when Marseille made the round of 8 in the Champions League in 2012. I wouldn't say that they're losers per se.
I mean, you have to look at remember the time when Marseille did reach the Champions League quarter-final. It was in the middle of losing 10 league games in a row, and that run was actually punctuated by winning the Coupe de la Ligue against Lyon. And when a fantastic opportunity of playing in the Champions League quarter-final against Bayern Munich at home, and we have fans protesting, and it was eventually Didier Deschamps and the boardroom struggle at the time eventually led him to go and coach the national team. But the form surrounding Marseille at the time was absolutely horrendous. Starting from, I think,
but those players are doing it night in and night out in Europe, and they had done it the year before in the league.
But you also the squad back then. I mean, Stefan Mbia, Lucha Gonzalez, who just left, I think, in the January of that year, but he did help the team reach the
Cheyrou, Diawara,
I think Marseille had they had the benefit of having a couple of battle-hardened European veterans. We had also exciting young players, Remy Azpilicueta, who just won the Premier League yesterday, and now this has been replaced by the likes of Thauvin, Imbula, who are a big up and coming now, but at the time, especially when they're new to the club, had just signed from League 2 or the bottom realms of Ligue 1 with very few experience. I mean, that did lead the club to lose 6 Champions League games in a row in 2013-14. It was still, nowhere near, I think, becoming, entering the European elite, or even just returning to the top 16 teams in Europe, as we were just 2 or 3 seasons ago.
Well, can I go back to Bielsa for a second, though?
Yeah.
You said that you also wrote this for French Football Weekly in the week, that you feel that the players are more to blame. But why? To me, I feel like it's a tactical issue that he insisted on playing 3 at the back, and despite it not working out over and over and over again. I mean, he refused to use Doria. He refused to put Alloway in alongside another player. He, is trying to jigsaw these, natural fullbacks and Morel and Fani into center back positions. Why insist on playing that system? I mean, at least drop a Romao or an Mbula into central defense. They're more defensively oriented players.
I think in certain games this season, I think that is acceptable to say that Bielsa has been wrong, and I think the coach himself would be the first person to put his hands up, especially when they defeat and through a defeat in the following press conference, he does hold his hand up and say, look, it is my fault. I should have done this and I should have done that. But that is the coach that we have, and that is the tactics. He is the decision maker at the end of the day, and the tactics that he has used is not something out of the blue. It's not a Hail Mary sort of thing where let's just go for it and let's just see how it works out sort of thing. We did play with 3 at the back in the first half of the season. It's either 3-3-1 or 4-2-3-1, and it has worked remarkably well in the first half of the season. Since it hasn't gone so well, maybe teams are becoming more accustomed to the way Marseille play. Maybe they've unlocked Bielsa's formula. But considering the likes of Doria, that's unexplainable. I can't really explain where highly rated Brazilian young player has gone. But if Bielsa does say that he wasn't ready, and there was one occasion I remember watching a reserve game back in October where Doria was actually being well handled by 18, 19-year-olds who are more accustomed to the French way of playing. I think his argument holds true. But most of Marseille's criticisms do come from mental rather than tactical issues. I'll be the first one to say that things haven't gone our way, especially in terms of refereeing. But I think that argument doesn't really hold anymore when Marseille have been presented with so many opportunities. When a claim of handball, or against Lyon where the goal wasn't given, or in Bordeaux where the referee didn't give a penalty for a clear handball. Okay, fair enough, those things happen, but what we have are players that completely lose it minutes afterwards. Against Lyon,
Bordeaux was it's a case example of that. Again, I'm a Lyon fan. But I see your point there. I think it was a foul on Lopez. Anyway, but the Bordeaux game is the case example of that. 2 bad calls and the wind goes out of their sails.
Absolutely. Against Nantes, not that there was any refereeing decision, but once that mistake of Mandanda slipping led to the goal, the team, just couldn't really get their act together. Against Lyon, whether it was a goal or not a goal, that's an argument for another day. What we have is Morel and getting sent off moments afterwards for just for hacking down the player when Lyon were counter-attacking and Marseille seemed to have literally imploded. What we have is, fair enough, decisions do go against you enough. There are league tables that are adjusted for refereeing decisions out there that say that, Marseille wouldn't have actually been in the title position that they think they would have been had those decisions gone their way. But what we have are players, leaders on the field, or so-called leaders, the key members of the team, who are unable to, rally the team to focus during these issues. We are in the home end of the season. After Paris Saint-Germain in April, there were 7 games to go. 7 games where you could either literally win the title or at least reach the safe bet for the Champions League, and that hasn't happened due to Marseille's mental frailties.
Excellent.
Just that one last thing, extremely
very quickly.
I think against PSG, I think Bielsa actually got it wrong. 3-4-3 was not the way to go when playing Le Mila in such a big game. Was not. You probably didn't have a choice. But if you would have put the team he put at Metz against PSG, and I know he couldn't have because of injuries and suspensions and what have you. It would have been much more difficult to break down, because PSG really address this game as a Champions League game. This is not like a Ligue 1 game. It's like you can't lose, especially when you have these type of players.
Right, I'm going to cut the debate there, or else we're going to slowly turn into the Marseille show, I think. So we'll move on. This week in our Talent Scout section, Eric will talk to us about Lyon's Clinton Ng.
Yeah, I wanted to mention NG. I think that he's been a little bit overlooked. We talk about Lyon's success and it's the development of Lacazette, the form of Fekir, Tolisso, Ferry, but I think for me NG has been really impressive. He's developed really rapidly. He'd only played 80 minutes in the league before this season, and prior to this, I think a lot of people looking at Lyon's younger strikers would look at Iatara, Benzia, Rachid Ghezal as being already ahead of NG, but he's come up with 6 goals and 7 assists so far this season, 3 goals and 2 assists in the last 5. I think that, especially with Gourcuff's injury struggles, he's made himself a clear first choice alongside Lacazette. He's small. He's a little bit smaller than Lacazette. He works well as a second striker, and his pace and ability to take players on has been really instrumental in setting up Lacazette. And recently he's discovered a little bit more of a scoring touch. I think that's been important, particularly as Lacazette, in his return from injury, has not been the same player we've expected. He's continued to get goals, yes, but a lot of them have been penalties. I think NG's, along with Fekir, has really become one of the team's biggest threat from open play. And I think that his ability for the future is really impressive. He sort of broke out, if you will, with Cameroon, the national team, in Cup of African Nations qualifying. Scored a brace against the Ivory Coast, and it was a very important game for his side. And I think, like we've seen with Gradel post Cup of African Nations, that ability to have some level of success in the national team. I know he wasn't as successful in the tournament proper, but it gave him a little bit of confidence, and he's really found a very rich vein of form within this Lyon attack. He's a tremendous player. He does have some drawbacks. He's great at taking players on, but he may have perhaps a little bit too much self-belief in this department. He may lose the ball occasionally when doing this, but within that Diamond 4-4-2 that Lyon improve, he's made this team so much more dynamic. He's willing to aid the fullbacks in pressing high up the pitch. His movement around and with Lacazette has been tremendous. I mean, we look at the way that Lyon's offense has clicked this year, playing the same system, but the way he interacts with Lacazette has been integral to the way this Lyon team plays. Last year, his role was filled by Bafé Gomis, who, again, is an able goal scorer, but doesn't have the movement, the pace, and the ability to harry the opponent's defense that NG does. And I think he's really been sort of an unsung catalyst to Lyon's season. Going forward into the future, Lacazette's been linked with a lot of clubs, moves abroad. We've links to Newcastle, Arsenal, Spurs, any number of big money clubs, as it were, even PSG. But I think that, were Lacazette to go, I think that Lyon, wouldn't really suffer that much. I could see the likes of Mohamed Yattara coming in, and those two taking up the reins of Lyon's strike partnership, and this team, continuing to turn players over and develop them. I mean, I think that, along with Tolisso, the NG's really been the breakout player this season. We'd seen glimpses of Fekir's potential towards the end of last season. I think I remember a game against Bastia. He'd had maybe a brace and an assist, or 2 assists and a goal. So we'd seen his potential, but NG has really come out of nowhere. And, if he can be a little bit more cognizant of when it's better to take on players and when to play a pass, he could really be one of the top players in Ligue 1 in the next few years.
Yeah, thank you for that, Eric. I think NG's certainly one to keep an eye on, especially if Lacazette goes. I think he could fill a role there. Moving on, it seems like it was an inevitability in the end for a few weeks, but Lens relegation was finally confirmed this weekend after defeat to Lille. It's been an uphill battle all season for Antoine Koumbaré's men. Philip, what was the biggest factor in their downfall this season?
Being completely unsettled in the summer, they were threatened to not even play in Ligue 1 for most of it, and not be able to buy players at all. So there's this French organization called the DNCG, which has the power to forbid promotion to a certain amount of clubs, the clubs who do not fulfill a certain amount of financial regularities. So Lens were in the cosh for that, mostly because they did not play in their own ground this season, so they played the big games at the Stade de France against PSG, Marseille, and Lille. And the other games they played at Amiens, which is between an area between Lens and Paris. averaging something like 7,000 attendees against. So we're talking games against Toulouse, against Monaco, and what have you, which is completely different to what they would get at Bollard. So they couldn't play on their own ground because it's being renovated for year 2016, and we knew that before. But the great thing is, it's being renovated to have fewer seats than before. I mean, how stupid is that? It's really extremely moronic, and the whole situation is, as a club, is a complete mess. Honestly, you have an owner who used to be the shareholder, as he had most shares, who's called Gervais Martin. He's got the club's best interest at heart. He's a Lens fan from the day he was born. He really loves the club, and he's quite popular with the fans. But he ran out of money, and he decided to come back to sell to a French bank, sorry. And he tried to come back with an owner who either does not want to give the money or doesn't have as much as he said he had. So basically, Lens have no money, they can't recruit, and they're going back to Ligue 2, and it's a real travesty because they probably with Marseille there's a second club to bring as many fans on the away trips. Marseille fills the allocation every time, and there's always loads of people. You've got a Marseille fan in every single town in France. So wherever Marseille play, even if it's at Lens, which is on the other side of the country, there'll be loads of Marseille fans. Lens, just the whole town just moves away for away games, and it's just great to see. And I'm really saddened to see them go down. I think everybody in the world of French football is, and more than likely won't. I mean, I can't see a great season next season in Ligue 2, unfortunately.
Let's talk more about their performances on the field now. Mo, how were they? What contributed to them on the field?
I mean, when it's not a great thing when teams get relegated in any case. But with Lens, I feel like extra sadness almost. They're not the typical lower league club or that's accustomed to life down there. It's a French equivalent of Leeds almost. Leeds, the turn of the century, doing well in England, and Lens, who, like Phil said, hold big attendances and are well liked across the country. So to see them relegated, especially meekly almost, it's actually not that good to see. But on the field, I don't think they've done much wrong. I think Antoine Kombare has done all he could. Having to play the same players over and over again, especially with no room for manoeuvre through the transfer market, is probably what constitutes their downfall. They've played wonderfully well, especially against just teams above them, really. But not having the opportunity to reverse that, the results haven't gone their way, and sadly, it's just been all downhill for a long time now. And I hope they try and find some sort of level in Ligue 2 next season, so that they could come back straight away the following year.
Despite going down, Lens have a few interesting young players in their squad. Eric, who do you see remaining in League 1 from their team?
Yeah, I mean, Comboire's got a deserved reputation as developing young players, and we've seen that with quite a few players. Benjamin Bourigeaud is the first one that comes to mind, and he's out for the season, but in the first 20 or so matches that he played, he's shown great awareness. I mean, as a box-to-box midfielder, he's only 20, but I could see him. If Blanc continues to use this 4-3-3, he's the kind of player that could maybe become key for France in 4 to 5 years' time. That high energy attacking, defending balance in midfield could be a real boon to the national side. The other player that's the obvious mention, I think, is Jean-Philippe Gbamin. 19 years old, playing as a center back is not something we see too often, even in Ligue 1, which is a youth-driven league. We saw it recently with Samuel Umtiti, and that's worked out quite well. I mean, he's developed really well. I'm not, perhaps not seeing quite the same potential in Gbamin, but there's certainly been potential there for a player to be developed. And also the goalkeeper Ryu, I could see him. He's not had the best of seasons, but I think that he certainly could be a useful backup to some club in Ligue 1.
Well, let's finish this chat about Lens' unfortunate relegation with a bit of a positive. I'll open it to the floor. Is there a highlight of the season for them in Liga? No?
I think silence would probably.
The win over Lyon, I think, early in the season. That was again. It wasn't Lyon were not yet at full strength. I don't think Betamo was fit yet, but to win at the Gironde, I think is a more than credible result. They were, I believe, 9th in the table at that point. Things look good. Camboire was trying to show how to play football the right way. I mean, this team, having watched them, a handful of times over the season, 7 or 8 times, I've been continually impressed by Lens. They despite their struggles, they've played with good intent, and it's just been a matter of quality. They want to attack. They want to get on the ball. That loss to Bordeaux a few weeks ago was just gutting. I mean, I think Lens were much the better for much of that match. But to have that goal at the end by, I believe it was Maurice Bellet, to lose like that, it was just, really a tough thing to have happen. And it is a shame. I mean, I totally agree with Mo. It's a sad thing to see a team that tries to play football the right way go down, especially when we have so many clubs in Ligue 1 who take, even at the top, who take this ultra-defensive approach. We look at the likes of Saint-Etienne and Monaco. To see a team play positive attacking football and just kind of get kicked in the teeth as a result is, the aesthetic side of me is a little disappointed in that.
I agree.
Sorry.
I would just like to say, I agree with Eric there. Especially when you see their results or performances against the bigger clubs, Ligue 1, like the win against Lyon right at the beginning of the season, and then through Christmas away to Montpellier, and in the first derby against Lille. Again when they do come across a higher opponent, they just do go all gung ho. They play with such positivity. Maybe it's not always rewarded, but it's refreshing to see, particularly like Eric said, against when we can compare them to the likes of Saint Etienne, for example, and the overall defensive approach of the league. So the fact that it hasn't been rewarded and that they haven't really, forces outside of the club and off the field have rather contributed more to their relegation is quite sad to see.
What's really sad is that they really you don't really know what's next, because they really invested a fortune in getting back to the top league, and when they were in the first division this season, they didn't play in their home, they couldn't recruit, and you just don't know what's going to happen this summer. I mean, there's every chance that the DNCG can go back at them and relegate them to National, which is the third league. We just don't know what the situation is. There's not enough communication done, and we just don't know what's going to happen. This is the most sad thing, because we had teams playing the right way, but they were stable. They had a budget and they had their own stadium. Everything was working. With Lens, we just don't know what's going to happen.
Well, we wish them all the best, really, especially on that point. And I think Eric made a great point that that Bordeaux result was really the dagger for them this season, I think. Moving on to the special report this week, it comes from Philippe, who will tell us about Troyes' successful Ligue 2 campaign.
Yeah, speaking of a side who play football the right way as well, Troyes were relegated 2 seasons ago, so finished 18th. And now they're back. They not only are they promoted to Ligue 1, they are Ligue 2 champions. They won at Nîmes 2-1 in midweek. So well done to them. So a bit of history. The club has also been like Lens. I didn't really didn't make the whole research comparison between the two clubs, but they have quite a lot in common. They've been in financial difficulties. So they've been 3 clubs starting in 1900 that was dissolved in 1967. Then another club was created in 1970, which was called Troyes Home Football, which was dissolved in 1986. And then we had the current Troyes side. So the club is actually only 29 years old. So it's very, very young. My recollection of Troyes when I first got into football was in the early 2000s, where Troyes got promoted and beat Paris Saint-Germain 4-2. And they were playing. It was with a manager called Alain Perrin, who actually was Marseille manager at the time of Hossam Mido. It was just after the Drogba era, I think. And they played really, really great football. They finished the first season in the top flight. They finished 16th, so barely avoiding relegation. Then they did 2 seasons where they finished 7th, and the football was great. So just after the first season, 7th, they won the Intertoto Cup. They beat Wolfsburg, and they were beaten in the UEFA Cup by Leeds United. Just by 1 goal, but again the football was really good. They finished 7th once again the season after, which was 2002, and then it's all been up and down between Ligue 2 and Ligue 1, and sometimes you get this thing where they spend too much time in Ligue 2, and sometimes the relegation to National enables them to regroup, get rid of the deadwood, go back up to Ligue 2, and after a couple of years get promoted again to Ligue 1. So this is what they did, and that's the comparison I wanted to make with Nantes, that Troyes played great football last time they were in Ligue 1. They were relegated, but it was not the end of the world. They knew what they were doing. They knew they had the funds. They knew they had the stability to go straight back up, and now they did it in great fashion. Really, it's really great to see such a side back in Ligue 1.
And we look forward to them in Liga next season playing teams like Monaco, who won at the weekend, and that win pulled them 5 points clear in 3rd place. And should they beat Marseille next weekend, like we've discussed, they'll seal their place in the Champions League next season. It's been an incredible run since the turn of the year, Eric. What's Jardim's secret?
We talked about this in previous weeks a couple of times, most notably last week in our discussion of their tie against Juventus. The way that this team's been constructed is really what it is. There's a great balance of these young, tight, exciting attackers. We look at Martial, Herrera, Carrasco, Silva are the front 3, and the more time he's given to those players, relegating the likes of Valère Germain and Dimitar Berbatov to the bench, the more we've seen this team really open up and become an exciting counter-attacking team. At the back, you've got the likes of Raji, Toulalan, Abdennour, Carvalho, very solid veteran players. The likes of Carvalho and Toulalan particularly have a great level of European big game experience earlier in their careers, and they're a little bit older, but they, as well as still being able to play at a relatively high level, they can also be good role models for the players that are in similar positions. Look at the likes of Timothée Bakayoko, Kondogbia, Fabinho. There's a great balance on this team, and it's also being done in a way that's financially sustainable. If Ocampos does end up going to Marseille permanently, this team will have quite the considerable transfer net after the sales of James and the potential sale of Falcao. And I know they brought in Silva, but at quite the cost. But this is the way to build a sustainable team, and it's what Monaco are really, really doing well. The other thing that I think Jardim's really, really improved upon in the past, in 2015, really, is making the tactics better suit Moutinho. He was under the manager last season. He was sort of misused in this narrow 4-4-2 and not really given the chance to exploit his ability to play a ball over the top or send someone in for an assist. But now that they've got this 4-3-3 with this really dynamic front 3, I mean, Moutinho's really come into his own as well, and Martial in his goal scoring form. I think they just giving that front 4 license to attack while still maintaining a solid defensive base is really what's allowed Monaco to become the force that they have been in 2015.
Mo, is it surprising they've done so well despite losing key personnel like Falcao and James Rodriguez?
Yeah, I think it's very surprising, especially not just for the fact that they've lost their key players, but after the start to the season that they've had. It's very surprising to see them really kick on in the final half of the season, and especially in the last few games, considering also the fact that they've also had added Champions League commitments, which that wasn't expected at all. With the current young players that they have, and the future is really, really bright for the players, Leonardo Jardim in particular, and also the club. And if they do return to the Champions League, and I can see that they are favourites to do so as well, they can invest further into the playing squad and maybe slowly but surely return to challenging Paris Saint-Germain once again next season.
Well, what's really surprising in the last couple of weeks is after being such a stout defensive outlet, they've now found a way to score more goals, which is a dangerous combination, Philip. Could Monaco challenge for the title next season?
Well, they're not that far off, are they? For a side that can't score goals for half a year, they're only 9 points behind Paris Saint-Germain. Well, the goal difference is not that good, obviously. But it's picked up, and there will be decisions that will have to be made this summer. We talked about Falcao, and the club have to decide what they're going to do with him, because it doesn't look like Manchester United are going to keep him. He hasn't had the best of seasons. We don't know what is the situation with Berbatov. Is he going to enjoy being on the bench? I wouldn't think so. He's been on the bench a couple of times this season. He didn't particularly like it, and so you've got this dilemma: do Monaco keep Falcao first of all, who's quite a big who's on quite big wages? On the other hand, will people buy him? That's another point. And then the other point is that you've got Martial, who's having a great season, and it would be such a shame to see him either played out of position or worse, being on the bench. So there'll be a lot of decisions to be made, especially if Monaco finish third. That means they'll have to play the Champions League playoff, and then prepare for another season of Champions League football. But they've done it this season, and they managed a quarterfinal. So there's been worse.
Exactly, and I think it'll be interesting to see how Monaco do get on with those young players next season. It's now time for our heroes and villains of French football, as always. Guess we'll go first. So, Mo, who have you chosen as your hero and villain after this week's action?
For hero, I'd go for Andre Pierre Gignac, scoring a centennial amount of goals for Marseille, and also Lorient Toulouse in Ligue 1. But also being the game winner for Marseille at a time when the club really needed someone to stand up and push the club forward to ensure 3 points and delay Monaco's progression to the Champions League a bit more, and it sets the tone up really nicely for next weekend's clash at the Velodrome. So he's done tremendously well on Friday night, and I think it's my vote for a hero. There weren't many poor performances, I think, in terms of who the villain of French football is. But after looking at how Monaco have really done well in the last few weeks and are really pushing on to take that third spot, my villain of the week being Nabil Dura, who got himself, I think, clumsily sent off yesterday against Toulouse when Monaco were really in the ascendancy. They had already largely seen the game out, and for him to miss the run-in is poor on his part. And if I were Leonardo Jardim, I'd actually be giving him a talking to, really. When your team is in the lead and ready to close the game out, that's really, really silly for him to do, provocatively lashing out at Kanabiyik. So I think that's my vote for villain of the week.
So, some interesting choices there. Eric, who have you got this week?
Yeah, you have to go with Gignac. There's, it wasn't the most exciting weekend in the league, but Gignac took that game by the scruff of the neck. Great skill, especially on that first goal. Should have had an assist or two. It's been months since he played like that. My villain is Christophe Galtier. I think that he's really got only himself to blame for not setting up positively enough. He's got to move away from that defensive 4-3-3 in order to win matches against these quote-unquote lesser teams. I know Bastion's a tough place to go, but with Marseille and Monaco playing each other this weekend, a win in Corsica was essential this weekend in order to give Saint-Etienne any hope of qualifying for the Champions League. He doesn't bring on Cornier until 5 minutes from time, and that midfield of Clement, Diomande, and Nguemo is not going to give any creative impetus, and he's just become over-reliant on Gradel, scoring the odd goal here and there, and it's not enough. He needs to be more attacking. I see that Galtier's just nominated for one of the UNFP's Manager of the Year shortlist, and Jardim's bizarrely nowhere on that list. So, obviously we don't see eye to eye, but Galtier needs to be more positive, and it's looking like it's going to cost his team once again.
And we will come back to that managerial talk in a little while. Philip, who's impressed and depressed you this week?
I was impressed by the Troyes team who won Ligue 2. So once again, they're really a great team to watch. They're going to play football the right way, and they're going to keep doing that next season. And that's a great thing for the league. So Ligue 1 is losing Lens, but is gaining Troyes, which is which is a swap in every way. My villain would be Florian Thauvin, who's proving once again how petulant he is and getting punished by Bielsa. Probably wasn't his first warning, and he's already had discipline problems in the past, where he was contracted to Lille when he was playing at Bastia, and Marseille got him, and so Lille are really not really happy about that type of deal. But Thauvin said no, I want to play for Marseille. So now we don't really know what's going to happen to him either. There's been talks of him going to Spurs or Newcastle this summer. And I'm not so sure Marseille will be better off without him.
Well, it's some interesting choices. It almost seems Thauvin makes it every week. But for our final talking point of the evening, I am going to change things up a little bit because we've just been reported that according to RMC, Christophe Galtier, as Eric said, Jocelyn Gourvenec, Hubert Fournier, and Laurent Blanc have been nominated for the Managers of the Year, which means no Bielsa or Leonardo Jardim. Can I get some reaction from that, please? I'll start with you, Mo. No Jardim in that list. That's really surprising.
I think that's more surprising than the fact that I think Jardim was a clear shot to be named on that shortlist, especially given Monaco's rise since the winter, and also the fact that they have helped the league and French football really push on in terms of in the eyes of their place in Europe, really, because reaching the Champions League quarterfinals, especially with the team that they've had, is no mean feat. And now, playing the way they have, grinding those positive results, challenging for the top three, it's really a surprise that Jardim hasn't made it. And much of Monaco's successes have actually been down to him and his ability to get the best out of the young players. How he made the shortlist, how he hasn't made the shortlist, and how Christophe Galtier has is really, really surprising for me.
Have we got a favourite from that list, Eric or Philip?
It's got to be Hubert Fournier for me. I mean, the way he's come on, and especially with Tolisso and NG, the way those players have developed under him has been nothing short of remarkable. I mean, these are players that had the barest amount of Ligue 1 experience, and Fekir didn't have much more. And for them to be, among the top players in the league, and for Lyon to have a great offense and a great defense, really, it's tremendous. And you got to remember also Fournier struggled with injuries too. He's not had Bisevac for pretty much the entire season. And Gourcuff has missed a good amount of time. Lacazette missed a month. Beremo missed a month. Jale and Gonalon have each missed some time. He's been forced to shuffle his pack perhaps a little bit more than he'd like. It's got to be Fournier. And Galtier, again, with Mo, I mean, the way he set that team up in the Europa League was really disappointing. I don't see how he's anywhere near the shortlist, especially with his previous record in European competition. And his transfers didn't work out. Wolfswinkel and Monet Paquet have been really disappointing. Yeah, Galtier is maybe in my shortlist for most disappointing manager of the year.
I do agree that Hubert Fournier should win. Let's not forget that Reims were doing great under him last season, and now that he's gone, Reims are really 50-50 with Evian to go down. after changing their manager. And just the way he managed the whole youth thing is really commendable. I don't really see Blanc's season as a particularly good one. It's just that he has very good players with him, and he hasn't really changed tactics. I mean, he if anything, he's proven to be extremely stubborn with his 4-3-3 with the aligned three midfielders. But it's not an easy job, and let's not over criticize what is a very high pressure job. On the subject of UNFP, Jardim has really been criticized by the media for being too boring, which he was for a certain amount of time. I mean, if you watch Monaco's Champions League group stage games, I mean, don't watch them; they're horrible. And Galtier, I think Galtier is just more posted. So maybe UNFP are fickle. I don't know, but I do agree that Jardim should be in there, and Galtier is probably a favourite for being vocal or making the press laugh after the game or at press conferences. But I've seen Saint-Etienne play a couple of times. I didn't watch the game at Bastia, and it's not great either. I mean, I'm not particularly looking forward to Saint-Etienne being in the Europa League next season if they're going to sit there with their 4-5-1 just sitting back. It's really not that much more entertaining than what Monaco offered in the Champions League group stages.
And a quick word to say, Jocelyn Gourvenec being voted is a positive for the league as well. Guingamp have been pretty good. That's all we have for this week, I'm afraid. Special thanks to Mo for joining us this week. Thank you very much. And
thank you.
Thanks to Eric and Philip as always. Thank you for tuning in, and we shall see you next week.